BIDI. June 9, 2019. So BIDI is back. He greets you. So here I am back again to answer all your questions about who you are and not your character. So we're going to talk together, so let's hear it. Hello BIDI. I am very happy to carry you in my heart right now and that I feel that I am you in my heart. Same for me. Where's the question? It was a feeling. Don't be shy, huh? I just received a question. Hello BIDI. I have the conquistador on my back that has been hurting me for several years. What does that mean? Thank you. The conquistador, located in the back, between the shoulder blades, is an entrance door, on the one hand of the final metatronic impulse but also of Christ. In itself, it is obviously connected to the heart organ, chakra and crown. On each side of Christi and especially in the last few weeks, there is a particular alchemy where many of you feel pressure, pain from something that unfolds on each side of Christi, which can go all the way up to the neck. This corresponds to the deployment, the perception of your wings, of the body of eternity. This process is etheric and completes the activation of what you have called the sacred limnisate, the opening of the heart, the opening to the truth that you are. So of course, it can become painful, as soon as there may be some spinal anomalies, which can make the process more sensitive in some people than in others. The only meaning is this one. The resonance of the heart and the head, the contact, the primacy of the heart over the head, within this body of flesh will effectively give particular sensations to this back. There is not strictly speaking a blockage, but simply a process that can be more or less painful, more or less sensitive, depending on what you know about your so-called stellar origin. This is only a transitory passage, effectively allowing the concrete realization of the mechanism, no longer called ascension, but dissolution within the primordial ether. That is, as you say, the omega that has joined the alpha and puts you in the best position to live the collective process, without being affected by some elements of reticence of your person or your body itself. Here again, I can only advise you not to question yourself on the meaning of this, but to accept it, and you will very quickly notice that, as soon as you no longer question yourself, the why or the how, there is a form of pacification and fluidity that will settle you in the process. Remember, especially for those who feel and experience energies and vibrations, that energies and vibrations have only been an interface with truth, which has allowed you to come as close as possible to being and non-being. But if you bring your consciousness, today, to the perceptions, which in some of you have been present for years, you will enter into friction with consciousness, and the way, consciousness, at the level of where you bring your consciousness. Be clear about the manifestations, whether at the level of the head, the chest or the sacrum or elsewhere, but above all, do not question them, let them unfold on their own, by the intelligence of the light. The best way to be available is not to think about it, not to question yourself and, above all, to let the process take place independently of your character and your head. This is how you will notice the fluidity of the process, the absence of resistance, or reticence that is simply related to your questioning about what you feel. At this time, you should not direct your questioning or your consciousness on the process that takes place at the interface of this body of flesh with the body of eternity. There are, and you have seen it, for many of you, a certain number of physiological changes, quite natural, concerning the so-called central regulatory processes: hunger, thirst, sleep, elimination, mainly by urine. You can see a large number of changes which, in the end, are only readjustments between the person itself, the choice and the non-being. The more you are free to let things happen without you, the easier it will be. The elders have told you for years, they have trained your consciousness on the points of junction with spirit consciousness, allowing you to somehow anchor, to hang the body of eternity, but in the process that is taking place today, we do not need you, nor your head, nor your sensations, nor your feelings, nor your perceptions. You're the intelligence of the light and certainly not this bag of meat and certainly not this body of eternity, whatever the perceptions, sometimes important. That had been said. you can feel with a beak, you can feel, now for many, with wings, do not worry about it. The best way is to help the heart of the heart, by setting up time 0 inches the heart of your chest, where the perception, what has been called the heart chakra, without worrying about the appendixes, without worrying too much about physiological changes, whether it is the disappearance or modification of sleep, the modification of the frequency or intensity of urination, or perceptions in the back or in any other place. Of course, in this process, the vision, which was named long ago by a star, the vision of the heart, must not lead you into stories either. Let them cross you. In the same way, you are nothing that crosses you, you are what is motionless in the center and allows itself to be crossed. The more you understand this, the more you practice it, and the more you will be free of all alchemical, physiological, neurological, energetic and vibratory processes. Without it, remember, you will drift your consciousness away from the heart of the heart and let forms of unconscious resistance to the natural process of installing the Absolute I, right here, through this body. Today, it is much more useful to walk in nature than to ask questions or do exercises on energies or vibrations. Because it happens in the matter, in the bag of meat, and nowhere else. There's nothing to look for, that's where. There's nothing to explain. It's always the same. Ever told you, it's a problem of acceptance. Acceptance creates the crossing, creates immobility and silence. And just behind, you discover yourself, in love. Love does not need a body, nor this bag of meat, nor a body of eternity, nor the slightest perception, nor the slightest vision. If you accept this, you'll see that everything will go perfectly well, and the best way to check it is to take care of your life. If you have free time, go to nature, to the forests, even if there are no peoples of nature, rather than masturbate your consciousness with these stories of perceptions or sensations. You no longer need it. Of course, they will not disappear, but your consciousness will no longer be attracted, nor your mind. You will freely let the natural process take place. It is a natural process that does not need you. It has needed you, at one point, for many years, but today it is superfluous, it is an obstacle. If you accept this, you will verify it by yourself and you will notice a new fluidity, whatever the physiological, neurological, anatomical, energetic and vibratory modifications. This is in line with what Epa said. Be as humble and simple as possible and as integrated into your life as possible, in order to live life. The current process does not need you. If you think you can, by connecting to your vibrations, accelerate the process, well, you're wrong today. The more you are in a natural state, the simpler you are, the more humble you are, the more busy you are with something other than thinking about your energies or vibration, or your body of eternity or your visions, the easier the process is facilitated. Be present to yourselves, and that is enough, in the ordinary course of life. There is nothing exceptional about it. We have prepared you both for this so that the process will proceed naturally. It is a process on which you cannot do anything, from which you cannot escape, because it is a process that is and will become, I remind you, collective. Have life to live, as life brings it to you, but don't ask yourself anymore, am I there? Why I smell fire, and from then on, you will really experience this blaze of love, with a burning sensation, but you will not be embarrassed. What bothers you is your mind that wants to take over the process. I have always said, I repeat, it is not the person who is liberated but you are the ones who are liberated from the person. How do you want to be free of the person if you're interested in that person? Be interested in it in the level of life and what it asks of you, but forget the processes of consciousness, what has been said on the gates, the stars, the new circuits, the bodies of origins, the lines, because the simpler you're in everyday life, whatever life asks you, the more you will see the evidence of the process, without being affected in any way by it, whatever the fire. Are you alright? Aren't you getting too hot next door? Voice. A little bit. Laughs. This is only the beginning. Any other questions? How does it feel to be in the hell and nothingness? Wonderfully well. It's the natural state. Most of the stars explain to you in their testimonies what they had experienced during their lives. How can you find the point of silence of the heart if you question at all ends at the field, your perceptions, your feelings, or if you move your consciousness elsewhere than in the heart? If you want the process to be lucid, fluid, don't worry about it. You are more likely to experience it by being present at what you do, whether it is caring for a child, working in a factory, walking in the wilderness, or thinking about what you are going through. It's not the same time anymore. Since the end of the primary anomaly, everything is automatic. Remember what Epa said and what I said to you, it's a theater scene, a video game. None of this is real. The simplest attention you give to a child, a tree you meet, a brother, or a sister with whom you're in natural, human exchange, you are more likely to finalize the process than any other questioning, because from the moment you enter into a relationship, even with, if you're a worker, with a part you make, with a tree, a brother or a sister, and the more you are present to yourself, but not as a person, but present in immobility, in the heart of the heart, and you let the process take place. And that's the only way you're totally available. And by the way, it's the marker, it's been said for a year, when you're in this liberation phase, you find that you're awake, no enlightenment, it's bullshit. I'm talking about awakening, you're available, to live the character himself, but it's no longer controlling, neither your emotions, nor your head, nor your stories, nor your memories, nor your fears of the future. If you live like that, if only for a few moments, if only for a few hours, if only for a few hours, you will instantly understand what I mean by living it, and you will see that there is no other positioning that can be better than that. Be natural, be humble, be quiet, be spontaneous, be lazy to the extent that life gives you, and you will see well. I repeat, the process that is going on no longer needs you. Be available to live your life and all that life demands of you. Everything else is done by itself. You are no longer in a phase of supra-consciousness or attention that will be located on a door or a vibrating circuit. You must be completely immersed in the present moment. And there is no better way to be in the present instant than to live the naturalness of what life gives you. And I repeat, it can be as much a walk in nature as it is to machine parts in a factory. Because when you are busy, overstuffed, physically busy, and you don't think about anything else, you're actually available. That is why Christ said, "Blessed are the simple in spirit, the kingdom of heaven belongs to them." That is why you have been told by many voices, the first will be the last will be the first. This does not mean that there is an advance or hierarchy. It simply means that those who are innocent, without question, today are much more fluid to settle in the truth. Everything that has been useful to you for many is now useless and superfluous. Don't look for anything, let things be lived. Once again, the current process does not need you, does not need your conscience, does not need energy and vibrations, even if senior they are there, and you feel them. You are no longer in a process of supra-consciousness or expansion of consciousness, but exactly the opposite, the extinction of consciousness that allows you to discover and be what you have always been. The consciousness, the absolute eternal I. You can only live your life in this world, and you will naturally live your life, which does not put an end to your responsibilities, but allows you to overcome them without any effort and without any difficulty. Well, we can continue. There are no more written questions. Well, let's move on to oral questions. Hello BIDI. When I am in a car, I feel that when I am stopped, I feel that the vehicle continues to move. Do I have to stop driving? But I don't see the connection. Laughs. Do you want me to send a mechanic to you? Laughs. You're the one who moves and you feel like your car is moving. Did you have anyone with you in the car who could confirm that? I look at the cars next to me, and I realize that I'm not moving. Go see a mechanic. There are very simple reasons for a car to move. It is sufficient if the motor is not properly fixed. It's very simple. No, the car doesn't move. But you said it was the car that was moving. No, I said I feel like the car is moving. Do I have to stop driving since I have this feeling right now? Often. But there is no risk. What kind of risk do you want to take? I don't know how far it can go. Until it disappeared. Laughs. Thank you. So keep driving. But there are still countless reasons why a vehicle should actually move by itself, too. But nevertheless, if this feeling that this car is moving is only related to your body, which moves, or your consciousness which moves, it doesn't matter. At worst you disappear and the car becomes what it becomes. Laughs. Can we continue? Another question? There is another one. How to explain 3/4 of an hour by car and wake up after 3/4 of an hour, the automatic controls at 120 km/h and discover when I realize the situation, it's like waking up from a deep sleep. I didn't drive, I wasn't there, I wonder where I am and I can't wait to see a signpost telling me where I am. My question is this. I didn't drive, so there was someone driving. Yes, you were driving, but you weren't there anymore. Your body legs, your consciousness is elsewhere. Many of you have noticed it. Of course, not always for such long periods of time, especially when you're driving and not walking and suddenly you wonder who drove. This process is common. The explanation is precisely the alchemy between the character who leads and who disappears. He is always present, and you are. In the heart of the heart in silence, and when you return to the ordinary of your conscience, how it is possible and how you can be there, and sometimes it even goes so far as to ask yourself who you are and where you are, even if it is a road you know. This is a normal process. Driving a car, a bicycle, a motorcycle is a process that you have learned and that becomes, over time, subconscious. When you drive, you don't think about stepping the brake, it happens by itself when you have to. You don't think about changing gears, it happens automatically. Well, it's exactly the same process. You drive your car in this bodily vehicle in its automatisms and you in what you are. In truth, you disappear. But in general it doesn't last that long. It's often dazzling. And often you realize that the last memory you have is 1/4 of an hour old. But it can also affect you. As soon as you are in the process of automation through learning, such as driving, this process is extremely common. Besides, if you ask, here, to whom it happened, you're not the only one. Put your hands up. So, how many are there? Laughs. Yes. That's normal. Because when you're in the car or busy making parts, you are not busy in character, but in habits, but it is not habits that you have decided. When you move from one point to another, you take your car, you know the route, you somehow go on, or you utopia it and then splash at some point. You have covered a few dozen kilometers, you even wonder where you are, if you're on the road and who you are. This is normal. It is when you are busy in the wild, with your children, or at work that the process takes place. This perfectly illustrates that the current process does not need you. So of course, this leads to this kind of questioning, but you can be assured, because you are not the only one. You pass habits that are no longer there, but which are automatisms, and driving is one. You're in the present moment, because you need some form of vigilance in the present moment when you drive, and that's where you are quiet, that's where you disappear, that's where you merge being and not being. It's done without the person. And of course, when you get back into the person it feels very strange. But once again, it makes changes, parts of the consciousness, the brain, automatisms, but not the habits you impose on yourself. This happens unexpectedly, and driving has the same virtues in these cases, the same virtues as walking in nature. You're immersed in the present instant. The availability for eternity manifests itself with a prerequisite, with a feeling that is prior to have disappeared from the person, which is true. But yet you didn't have an accident. Do any of you have any accidents because of this? Are there any hands rising? No. There won't be any anyway. Are you reassured? Yes, I have another question. Then go ahead. This time, I'm on a phone, I'm talking to someone I know, she's a lady. Throughout the conversation I'm exchanging, the following phenomenon has occurred. I'm outside my body, or a part of me is outside my body, this lady is in front of me. And I put my hands like this, one on each side of his shoulders, and I go through. This experience produced this. I was very, very well, for 2.5 or 3 days. You travel between consciousness, consciousness and a person. And as you have expressed it so well, a telephone conversation can be accompanied by the appearance by the vision of the heart of two people who are not on the phone, but next to each other. It is part of what has been called not bilocation, but the multi-location of consciousness. This process had been largely developed by the elders during 2011. Before arrive. All these manifestations that happen in your life, that can give a feeling of unreality, or questioning, are real. You are not dreaming, on the contrary, they are quite real. You're awake. And by the way, your last 3 questions are quite related to that. And that's very good as a kind of question, there too it made it possible to understand that it's not something that's isolated, but that's becoming more widespread for many. You will be taken and occupied there, by a conversation, previously for driving a car, and you are available at that moment there for the light. You are not frozen by your body, and even if you do not know where you are, or as in this case you see yourself next to each other or opposite each other. It's very real. That's the truth. And that's how the intelligence of the light shows you that you are not the character who drives or talks on the phone, but that you are something else. Light naturally leads you to the extinction of supra-consciousness, and there you are free, you're in joy. You have a smile on your face and you really discover yourself, you really find yourself, beyond all forms, beyond this character, beyond this very world. There are others, in time to go to bed. They will feel fires, at the extremities, at the head, at the heart, at the sacrum. It may even prevent you from sleeping or waking up. But all this is a normal process, and you can't do anything about it, you can't change it, and it can only get worse. All the circumstances of your lives, all the circumstances of your consciences, whether personal, superconscious or otherwise, are being profoundly shaken. But you can only notice that in parallel with this somewhat destabilizing aspect, sometimes there is a new breath that flows through you, made of liveness, joy, smiles, silence, evidence. This is how you cross all the veils, all the zones of beliefs, all the zones of habits, and everything is a pretext for that. And again, wait. You have not received all the charisms, and in the West, you're in this period of Pentecost. Nothing to do with religion, but it is the descent of the Holy Spirit, speaking in tongues, bilocation, and all the mystical processes that until now were reserved for certain saints, for certain people, is now becoming widespread. Who, for example, in relation to this question, has already had the impression, the experience that he was doing something physically and that there was another part of himself, without seeing clearly, who was doing something else? Raise your hand. It is an impression of duplication. How many? -4 people. That's not bad. That's 10%. But it will also become widespread. When I say that you wake up from sleep, and you know very well that in the morning you can wake up, more or less quickly, with the memory or not of some of your dreams, and which gradually fade away during the day. Most often. But I have already said that the dream is the reality, and that's how you discover that materiality and form are only wind. Something that passes. But you have to experience it to understand it, even if it questions you. And you will find at some point, linked to the collective, that you will really be awake. And you will leave that form, and the world as you leave the dreams in the morning when you wake up. It's exactly the same process, but you turn it around. It is in this body that you are asleep, but you have forgotten it. You find yourself natural, the absolute I, whoever sees the universe being created and decreed, seeing the creation passing, the universe is dissolving, then realizes that he has never moved and that he has always been there. All we have told you are not just puns and concepts, it is what you experience more and more frequently, with more and more intensity and lucidity. Even if it is indeed, and this is normal, it can be confusing or destabilizing. Any other questions? The same person has another question. At times when I don't expect it the least, while doing what I have to do. There are times when I am very well. And the last time this happened, very distinctly and 3 times, I heard, freedom, 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 freedom. Thank you. What you just said is a perfect illustration of what I said earlier. That's the way it works. Whatever called the white paradise, the disappearance, the great silence, you discover that you are that and that you are perfectly fine. It is like that once again, and you confirm it through your testimony, that we wake up from the nightmare of being a form or an individual. We're anterior to consciousness, anterior to all worlds, we're one and there is no one. As only the commander said, we will be ringing you so many times and it will become so evident that you will have to laugh about it. There's nothing serious in this world. It's a scam, a theft of freedom, a theft of conscience. And it's only natural that you should hear freedom 3 times. You have been called for some, countless times, first by Mary or the stars. You have heard your first name, recently ever, with I am you gave you the last keys. By naming yourself, you're the word/verb, but you are anterior to the word/verb. It is like that, by calling you, by being called, without any memory in relation to a car journey that you discover and experience freedom. And that's how it happens and how it will happen in an increasingly common and extensive way. Another one? Yes, there is another one. It's not that I have a big question, but since the time I've been listening to you, you've been able to free yourself from the character through your speeches, and I think I've managed to free myself from the character, and I feel like I've been able to hear you. I don't know if I'm totally free, but I think that with Jean-Luc this morning, he gave us a good practice to do, and I won't let go of that. Thank you very much. You're also thanked. She thanks everyone here. From the moment, as Christ said, when you will be gathered together in his name, here or elsewhere, it is strictly the same now. The 0 time that some of you live is enough to trigger the 0 time in the group. It is collective before the event is triggered in the whole creation. Not only in this dimension but everywhere, you live it in a group and it is normal. As soon as you are both gathered in the name of truth, because you live it and carry it even if it is not completely awakened, from the moment you live it even if it is not yet completely awakened, the other can only recognize himself, he can only wake up. For the moment it affects individuals, groups. The groups will get bigger and bigger, not with me, here, but from everywhere. Afterwards, you'll see that it will preferentially affect certain countries, certain cities, or certain regions. And at some point, it will affect the whole earth, and therefore all of creation. This is exactly how this natural process of awakening is organized and realized independently of you, because it is the intelligence of the light that you are really doing it, that organizes this awakening. And at some point, of course, you can imagine, the event will be visible and experienced by all in a totally synchronous way. But the fact that it takes place and not from one individual to another, but I have said it from group to group, from city to city, from country to country, sets up the wide paradise and creates the best possible circumstances and conditions for living it. And there is nothing you can do about it, neither it, nor limit it. You can only see it, we can only accept it, and the joy is right there. It's going to get more and more striking, more and more obvious and more joyful. You said that all this will end with a big burst of laughter. How else could it be in the evening? You will even laugh at your sufferings, your effects, your stories, at having even believed that you were a person who had to evolve, who had to transform. The truth is effortless, because the time has come. All I'm saying is, converge on that, and that's your experience. Let's continue. It was an experience that had a completely new facet for me. So I stop, I'm not in the physical movement, and I feel very well. Now, in that moment, what is new for me? I have the inner impression, in living, that the masculine and the feminine meet. There is no longer any duality between the two. Absolutely. Ebba mentioned it in his last satsang on the Canary Islands. You have been talking for years about the feminine and the masculine. Finally, that being said, since the origin of creation, between the bad guys and the good guys were the Geneticist mothers and the bad guys were the Ekans, you have brought together the two polarities. You live the primordial androgynous, you live the word/verb, and finally even the notion of masculine and feminine, which is well patent in this world, no longer makes sense. Even the stories of sacred feminine and masculine, soon you can only laugh. These were preliminary steps. Even the conscious co-creation that had been developed 2 years ago fades away before the truth. Truth ends creation. We're love. We were there before creations and all worlds. The initial step is nothing more than the final step. It was a dream, you wake up, you come out of the dream. And what you're expressing here too is like the disappearances while driving, and as was said in the previous testimony about the word freedom, yes, that's right. It's true freedom. Soon you will no longer be bound by any history, any form, any scenario, any becoming. It is the perfect state, which is an on state. It is the fusion of being and non-being, of the simulacrum and the sacred, which will only leave a great burst of laughter, really. And this was said by the elders and by Ebba, as the chaos of the world grows, you will be lighter, happier and free. Even if today it seems crazy to you, I guarantee that the reaction will be unanimous. It's normal. In the morning when you wake up, you just escaped a nightmare. Well, it's exactly the same. This world is an illusion, a scam and a nightmare, and yet it's there that you discover life, the truth, the path, and you realize that all this has never happened and that all this has only passed. It is the most appropriate, the most natural way to wake up. The image I give of waking up in relation to your life is exactly the same as your sleep when you sleep at night and when you wake up in the morning. When you are no longer subject to any conditions whatsoever, to any form whatsoever, to any consciousness whatsoever, you're indeed free. But the individual freedom you have lived, however intense, inexorably leads to collective freedom, since there has never been a character. We are not only each other, but we are each other's dreams. And that, as Ebba said, and in truth, the whole scenario of the dream and the nightmare happened in the initial moment, and today it is revealed. You can only laugh about it. None of this has any substance. All these forms, all these worlds, have been nothing more than an exteriorization, a manifestation of a dream or a nightmare. That's how you live it, that's how you accept it, and that's how you're free. Silence. We can keep moving forward. Sister, I had 2 consecutive dreams. First dream. I'm in front of a crowd, people are afraid and point behind me, and when I turned around there was a huge planet behind me. Second dream. The next day, I saw my body exploded into 1,000,000 stars and I realized that I was the millions of stars. It's special. It's a very beautiful dream. There is obviously a relationship between the planet that appears, which is the event or one of the events, and the truth. The stars you see in the sky are also a setting, it's also you. All the other brothers and sisters, in the other dimensions, it is also you, without exception. You are both the Geneticist mother and Yaldibrat, and you can only laugh about it. That's the truth, that's the joy, that's the freedom. You've always been there. This is what I experienced when I was incarnate, but at that time I was quite alone. This is also what Mayanandamwe was still living in India, and this is what you are living today, and it is announced to you as well by the modifications of your perceptions, the mechanisms of functioning of your various aspects of consciousness, but also as you have just expressed it, in dreams. The dream is the reality to a certain extent. I would say that the dream is much more real than your materiality somewhere. But beyond all dreams, there is the awakening, and this is the arrival of the wide paradise. the fusion of the one with zero time. As some have told you, the event is ongoing. Don't look for a date, you're in it. Don't look for duration, but rather for the intensity of what you live in these moments. Stay calm, be lazy at all levels, and the process will go perfectly well. Each of you has the opportunity to see it, to experience it. You will no longer be able to hold on to anything in front of the intensity of laughter and awakening. At some point, you will no longer be able to remain attached to anything even if you want to. Everything that the day before seemed to you to be suffering, of the body or of your life, will turn out to be a pretext, and only a pretext, to waking up. That's how it happens individually from all over the world, how it begins to be lived, as I said earlier, how it begins to be lived in groups, and how it will gradually affect entire cities. Imagine people in a city that's not too big, waking up all at the same time. Can you imagine what it's going to do? You get out of sleep. There is no better way to name it, to express it. That's exactly what it is. And once again, there is no need to believe or philosophize about it, since you'd both experience it in different ways, whether it is through disappearance behind the wheel, whether it is through dreams, whether it is through phone calls, whether it is in a group, and regardless of what I tell you, even during a meal, even during a moment of laughter, because you share joy, and you share the zero time, you share the truth. It is common, there is only one, and it is absolute. And it is as it has been said for more than a year, it is an evidence, even if today it seems questioning to you, even if today, you do not live anything of it, very quickly, you will live it as an evidence from everywhere. How can this world, this society, this pyramidal structure of enslavement and predation continue in any way whatsoever? As soon as you laugh at all this, as soon as you are free, you consume the world, you consume the dream, really and concretely. There will be nothing left of creation. I already said it when I was incarnate. And I have already said that what I said 30 or 40 years ago was for now, and that it could never fail. You can only see and experience it. You don't need a savior, a guru, a master. You don't need an entity, because all the entities, all the masters, the gurus, all the crooks, it's you. And you can only laugh at it. It puts an end to the dream, to the nightmare, to any notion of separation, to any notion of time that elapses, as well as to any notion of space. The love that you are needs neither form, nor world, nor expression, nor manifestation. That's how you are perfect. It's the perfect state. At the edge of Shantinalaya, you discover yourself, Satchitananda, supreme bliss, where nothing from any world can divert you from this truth. And everything is only a pretext in your current life, where you are, at your age, where you are in the circumstances of your life. It is the best conditions, whatever you still think, to wake up. Are you all right next door? Aren't you getting too hot? Next. Sister, it is a matter of simple clarification. At the beginning of the interview, you talked about ascension and dissolution. What is the link between these two processes? Do they have the same purpose? Ascension, not as it had been expressed by the ancients, the stars understood and even experienced intellectually by many. Remember, it was the liberation of this world, the return to your original dimension, therefore still a form. Dissolution, there's no longer any stellar origin that holds, there's no more people that holds. It was Ebba's great surprise, realized last year in May, that put an end to the myth of creation or form. So the dissolution will be almost synchronous, or even totally synchronous, with the ascension itself. The ascension, you live it in this body already. Some of you are living the dissolution, and all this will become collective. The closer it gets to the collective moment, the less you can distinguish between ascension and dissolution. But even the word ascension or dissolution means nothing. It is the illusion that dissolves. It has never existed, but nevertheless, from the point of view of a brother or sister present in a body, it is perhaps the most appropriate words. Dissolution is the moment when you are no longer subject to a fixity of consciousness of any kind within a form, but when you discover that you are the space, that you are the stars, as it was said in the dream. It is the same thing. Dissolution is nothing more than a total awakening, and I tell you, it will be a great burst of laughter. It can't be otherwise, and the more time really gives the impression and flows on this earth, the more there will be a synchronicity of the collective upward process with the dissolution of the white paradise. White paradise is not a vision, it's reality, and at some point you'll say it, the beautiful white girl, and bet you plus kudu blank. There is no shape, no landmark, no space, you will become white. And at that moment and at the same time, that the first part is the collective ascent, but in the time almost immediately after or during, the white paradise will disappear to leave what the person could call nothingness, but which is in fact love, the natural state, the absolute game. And the more time passes and, of course, the distance or time between the white paradise and the absolute will decrease like a skin of sorrow, and become almost concomitant. Let's continue. Sister, it was a curious question that came up. I wondered if Nibia was part of the creation, so that he was in the dream, and what was his function in the dream? To wake you up. There's no more sun, no more Nibia than land, no more you. But all these elements of the dream had to come together somewhere. It happens on Earth. It was explained. I told you earlier that the planets, the stars in the sky are scenery, have no reality, any more than you do. But you have dreamed so much, you have played so much to suffer, to be separated, to think you have to evolve, silence, that you have stretched the web of creation to the maximum, and it is precisely this notion of entropy, of infinite expansion, which can only bring us back to zero time. It is also a physical process. So, Nibia, of course, is you. Nibia is all love. Nibia is the encounter of what shines, the sun, of what appears within a form, which meets the formless. It is the same as the encounter between your physical body, your ordinary consciousness, and the supraconsciousness on the one hand, and on the other hand, the supraconsciousness that is extinguished before the absolute. It is the same. It happens in your cells, in your physiological or neurological circuits. It happens at the level of society, at the level of the earth, and at the level of all creation, without any exception. If you could live concretely that in fact what you think is real when you're awake, is only a dream, and that when you wake up you actually sleep in this world, you sleep in creation, and you live the truth. There's no other alternative, there's no other truth. All the other truths only passed by, only made you dream, and it had to end in a nightmare called confinement to realize the total stupidity, the total uselessness of everyone. You have always been perfect, you have never moved, you have simply forgotten it, the last key has been given to you. All the vibratory, Metatron keys have been revealed for more than 30 years, gradually. That's why Eber tells you that everything is accomplished, that everything is completed, that the process is in progress. He doesn't need you, he will go to its end no matter what you say and no matter what you do. I repeat, and I said at every intervention, everything that has to happen will happen, whatever you do, and everything that doesn't have to happen will not happen, whatever you do. When you get tired of it, as I said, to take care of your head, the vibrations, the feelings, you will have the evidence. It is only humility and simplicity. It is the way of childhood. It is the most magnificent way, accept to be nothing, and you are the whole. Superconsciousness makes you discover that you are the whole, but there is a trap. It is the choice, the spiritual pride of believing oneself to be a great being, who must evolve, who will help this or that. That is the trap of spirituality, that is the fraud of consciousness. You are not consciousness, you are anterior to that. Everything that happens and will happen, in your body, in your life, in your relationships, in your country, in your region, in your city, from everywhere on this earth and from everywhere in creation, can only lead you to that. Silence. Who could refuse freedom? I also said it, the unknown becomes known, right here, through illusion. That's what wakes you up, that's what heaven, that's zero time. Silence. You can continue. Sister, Jean-Luc told us that everything started here, and that everything ended here in relation to Quebec. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? It leads us to talk about cycles, it leads us to talk about the evolution of consciousness and life within the dream, it would lead us to talk about the first 5 dreams and the last dream you live, which is actually inscribed between a beginning and an end. The beginning was more than 50,000 years ago, but within this great cycle of more than 50,000 years, which goes on until today and ends at that time, there have been sub-cycles related to what has been called Atlantis. The first, second and third with each time, not global extinctions, but intermediate processes. The last dream was based on the Canaries. Within this last dream, in its last phase, that is to say, 12,000 years ago, and not at the creation of Atlantis 50,000 years ago, everything started here, and will end here. Everything is cyclical. What does that mean? Do not seek noon to 2 o'clock, do not wait for the heavenly Jerusalem that will land here, but simply that in this people, in this country, which I call the country, you were with the origin, and you are at the end, of the subcycle, the third subcycle of the last cycle. And so, how will that translate? Well, you're already living it, you have a form of intuition if I may say, you're available, much more than other peoples, for the truth, because you have the humanity, a brotherhood that exists in very few countries. That is the truth. So I didn't have the opportunity to travel when I was incarnate to your home, but the commander did, and you know very well that each country is marked by an element. Brazil is fire, Hawaii is fire, the Canaries is fire, and Quebec is the water of the origin of creation. So the important thing is to stipulate to you that there is every chance that when I was talking about groups, then cities and then really countries, you will be the first country to live freedom collectively. At some point you will all go out into the street, whatever the weather, laughing your ass off. You can only clap your thighs and hug and laugh because at home, the brotherhood of water, because of the historical conditions themselves, puts you in that position. It's obviously not in France, where they have the hard head, that this will happen. It's right here. And you will certainly be one of the first cities or even countries to experience the collective of the event, and all the others will follow one another afterwards. You are, and here I am talking about territory and not necessarily about you but about every human being placed on a territory and subject to certain elements. What is it here? The water. What do you live for? The fire. But after the fire that sets you on fire, you become water, you dissolve. You are spreading, you're as much the drop as the ocean. But for that to happen, the drops must live together as the ocean. It requires resonance, relationship, fraternity, culture, way of life, and also that dominant element within the territory, the country. It's simple, that's what it means. Silence. Sister. Thank you, BIDI. It may be that some of you feel it, perhaps some mediums have already told you about it or some researchers, but today, you live it, you are spontaneous, you are available, it is your nature and it is your culture. It is therefore very logical that in territories like this one, where separation could not be completely achieved, as is the case, for example, if we compare it with France, where everything is divided, where one has been set against the other, even on a spiritual level, on a societal level, I do not even mention it. So it makes perfect sense, by the water element, by the history of the territory, and by the fact that you're present today, on this territory. There's never any chance, it's all been written. Now, there's no need for the thousands of people who hear me to apply for an immigration visa to come here, Without it, I'll be thrown out of this country. Sister, we will keep you with us here. Anything else? Sister, in relation to the answer you have given, Quebec is recognized as a land of embrace, that is, of the people who come precisely emigrated to Quebec, feel this liberation. Yes, since everything is written, it is a video game, a theater scene, of course, and the fact that I can express myself like Oma, right here is not by chance, at this moment and not at another moment. Of course. Whenever tells you that everything has been written, everything has been dreamed, that's the strict truth. Silence. Anything else? I see some people starting to dream about Quebec right now. Laughs. Sister. Hello, I have difficulty understanding how. There is Oma, you, there are many other characters who come in channeling and we are all one and you still seem to have a character identity if you can say and at the same time there is nobody in the whole. But you can't understand it, you can only live it. What do you want to understand about that? There's no words. Laughs. One question. Does the whole thing contain all this set of creations there, all the characters? When we get out of there, we are all in the same thing, the same state and there is only one consciousness, you are one in the other, you express yourself from the point of view of the person who imagines that there are other people, but all those you see here are you. Sister. That's it, that's the point that has moved in consciousness from the beginning until now, that has made many people by crossing each other. And what's the question? Laughs. I don't see any questions here. Sister. The question is, does everyone only get into the game when you get out of the game? Oh, everything is over there, everything is reabsorbed there. But there's only you. Sister. That's right, there's you and you're you. You're and you and there you are, and you're always the same. Laughs. On another timeline, on another spatial line in another form, but it's you. You're the only one, there's no such thing. Sister. But there's nothing left after that. Nothing of nothing, nothing of nothing and everything, nothing of nothing and love. Sister. Just love left, well okay thank you. Laughs. That's exactly what it is. You answered your question all by yourself. Laughs. Sister. After the absorption of the worlds, of the universes, when we will all be together in love. You can't be together, since there's no one there. Laughs. It's a step. It is precisely the meeting of the wide parade, lived collectively on Earth, that will show you that there has never been anyone, that it is a dream. Sister. So my question. Do you think anyone will think of creating again? That's impossible. Sister. My question is no longer necessary. It is impossible, when you live what you are beyond being and beyond worlds that would want among those, among you who live the fire of the heart here and there is, who imagine creating anything. Raise your hand to those who live the fire of their hearts and imagine creating something else. You are full in the fire of your heart. You're in one piece, you're no longer fooled. Did a hand rise? Brothers and sisters together, no. Laughs. Thank you. But you still have to live it. The fire of the Sacred Heart, ascension, dissolution, disappearance, there is no one left, dream, strange experiences, all the questions you have asked, led you to this absolute truth. Creation is a dream that could only end in a nightmare, because it was the only way to wake up. We have played enough, we have created enough, and I challenge any conscience to refuse white heaven. See? Who would refuse love? By recognizing himself in this love, even if today he does not see it. No one. From the moment there is love agape, end of the creation, end of the dream, end of the illusions, end of the form, end of everything, because it never started. We can't even talk when we talk about the end of time or the end of the world. It doesn't mean anything, it's the awakening. How can you who have never started before be able to finish a game? Silence. But of course, depending on the person's point of view, this will always raise questions. But from the moment when the collective moment, without even being generalized to all creation, but will begin to affect beyond groups, cities, territories, regions, etc. Country, what do you want to do? You can only laugh, really. Silence. Let's move on. Sister, I have a question. When you listen to satsang from Europe, sometimes you tell them that you will visit them at night. Do you think tonight we can have your visit, that we're going to die laughing? Well, who among you had my visit? Raise your hand. Sister. 2 hands raised up. Oh, yeah, it's about time I got there then. Laughs. Well, we're going to change things. Silence. I promise, we'll raise our hands tomorrow and you'll see how many you are. I'll take care of your case. Room. Laugh and thank you. I remind you that there had been appointments for already 2 months, I think, since April, when I had decreed something at 11 p.m., right? Room. Yes. But for you, 11 o'clock p.m., what time was that? In Europe here is still the day. The room. 16 hours. It's still daylight. Well, I'll come by tonight at 11 o'clock for you too. The audience applauded. But it was indeed necessary to wait forever to set foot on this ground, in order to be able to ink it. Room. Ah. Oh. Congratulations. And now it will be done. So forget 5 p.m. for you since I gave you a privileged schedule which is 11 p.m. Applause. It's going to get hot in the cottages. Laughs. For Europeans who are listening to you, keep your 23 hours to yourself. Everyone has their 23 hours. And remember what I said, as I said before April and May, I didn't come to talk to you, I came to burn with you, to merge with you. There's no need for a speech, eh? But it's a great idea. We're going to implement it tonight. Sister. Everyone agrees. I can imagine that. Laughs. Sister. Can we sleep when you come? It is better to do so. Laughs. It's the best way not to interfere even if it wakes you up. And I thank you for suggesting this to me. Any other questions? Sister. We're already at the end of it. Then no more questions. So BIDI will greet you and BIDI tells you at 11 p.m. for you here in Quebec. Applause. And don't forget to laugh. I may tell you maybe next time, but I think there's competition. There's already AYOUN who wants to come back too. We'll see about that. Anyway, I greet you. The room, thank you. Through Jean-Luc Young. The Transformations. English translation, LMF.